Hello and welcome to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and Audiofics. This is a new mini-series called Strawberry Kisses. It was meant to be a one-shot and then it turned into a mini-series because I didn't stop writing it. And these are actually really long parts. So I hope you love it. Massive shout out to the artist Solodrafts for the commissioned artwork I got done. I love this picture and thinking for ages what to write, and then this story came to mind. So I hope you smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you share to anyone who else might enjoy it. And I hope you enjoy. Part 5. Sweet Kisses. The rooftop felt different tonight, not because it had changed. Paris still stretched out beneath it in a soft gold and shadow, the quiet hum of the city settling into something distant and almost peaceful. But because she had. Marichat stood near the railing, her fingers resting lightly against the cool metal as she looked out across the skyline. Her thoughts had slowed, steadied, no longer racing ahead of her the way they had been for days. Coming here hadn't been instinct this time. It hadn't been avoidance or habit. It had been choice. You didn't disappear. Kat's voice was softer than usual, the familiar warmth still there, but quieter, more grounded in a way that made something in her chest tighten before she could stop it. Marichat didn't turn away. She let the moment settle first, the weight of being here, of choosing this, anchoring her before she finally spoke. Neither did you. There was a faint shift behind her as he stepped closer. Not enough to crowd her, just enough that she could feel the presence of him now, steady and deliberate. Didn't think I should, he replied. There was no teasing in it, no deflection, just the same quiet honesty he had carried with him since the festival. She turned then, slowly. The world seemed to narrow for a moment as her gaze met his. He was closer than she expected, not too close, but close enough that she could see the way his expression had softened, the usual ease replaced with something more deliberate, more present. He wasn't searching her face, wasn't trying to read ahead. He was just there. You came back, he said, his voice low and certain. Marichat nodded faintly. I said I would. The silence that followed didn't press at her the way it would have before. It didn't demand filling. It simply held between them, quiet and steady, and for the first time she let it exist without trying to control it. Kat's gaze flickered briefly to her hand on the railing before returning to her face. Does that mean you're done avoiding me? There was a softness to it, a light teasing, but the truth behind it was clear. Marichat exhaled, her fingers loosening against the metal as she straightened slightly. I wasn't avoiding you. He raised an eyebrow. She huffed under her breath, a faint smile flickering before easing into something more honest. Okay, maybe a little. Just a little? A controlled amount? Strategic avoidance? Exactly. The exchange softened the space between them, something familiar threading through it without undoing what had changed. This wasn't the same as before. It couldn't be. Marichat's gaze dipped briefly before lifting again, more serious now. I meant what I said. About needing time? Kat didn't interrupt. He didn't move, he simply listened. I didn't know what this was, she continued, her fingers brushing lightly against her wrist, grounding herself in motion. And I still don't. Not fully. That's okay. The certainty in his voice made her look at him properly, searching for any hint that he didn't mean it. There was none. You're very calm about this, she said. A small, almost amused breath left him. I'm not. Her brows drew together slightly. You're not? He shook his head faintly. I just decided I wasn't going to make it your problem. That settled somewhere deep. Marichat took a small step forward before she could overthink it. The movement quiet but intentional. Why? Because you're already dealing with enough, he said, holding her gaze. And whatever this is, it shouldn't feel like pressure. The words eased something in her chest she hadn't realized being tight. He wasn't pulling her forward. He wasn't stepping back either. He was standing with her. I don't want to stop this, she said quietly. The admission hung between them, soft but clear. Kat's expression warmed, though he didn't move closer. Good. A small breath of something lighter left her, tension easing just slightly. That's all you're going to say? For now. She shook her head faintly, but there was no resistance in it, just a quiet acceptance of the space they were standing in now. The distance between them felt different, not something to avoid, something to cross. Marichat hesitated for a fraction of a second, then stepped forward again, closing the space more fully this time. She didn't stop halfway, she didn't pull herself back, she chose it. A hand lifted, hovering briefly before resting lightly against his arm. The contact soft and grounding rather than urgent. Kat didn't move immediately. His breath shifted just slightly, as if acknowledging the moment without rushing it. Then he stepped forward too, closing the last of the distance she had left. His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted to. She didn't. His fingers brushed against her wrist first, light and deliberate, before his hand moved to her cheek, warm and steady. Marichat leaned into the touch without thinking, the tension she had been holding easing in a quiet, almost instinctive way. The kiss wasn't sudden. It wasn't overwhelming. It was soft, a gentle meeting, their lips brushing lightly at first. Both of them still allowing space, still giving the other the chance to pull away. Neither of them did. The moment lingered, deepening slowly as the hesitation faded, replaced with something steadier, something certain. Marichat's fingers tightened slightly against his arm as the world seemed to fall quiet around them, the city below fading into something distant. When she pulled back, it was only just enough to breathe, her forehead resting lightly against his as the thoughts tried to settle. You're still here, he murmured. Her lips curved faintly. So are you. This time, when she closed the distance again, there was no hesitation. The second kiss was deeper, still soft, but grounding in something more certain now. Her hands shifting to his shoulders as she leaned into him, not leading, not following, just meeting him there, equal. His hand remained steady against her cheek, his other resting lightly at her waist, anchoring the moment without taking control of it. When they parted again, it was slower this time, the space between them lingering just long enough for the reality to settle. Marichat's breath was softer now, her gaze steady on his. This is real, she said quietly. Kat nodded just as steady. Yeah. And for the first time, that was enough. The moment didn't break, it softened. Marichat didn't step away immediately, her hand still resting against his shoulder. Her breath slower now, steadier as the reality of it settled into something she could actually feel instead of question. The space between them remained close, but it no longer felt fragile, no longer felt like something that might disappear if she moved too quickly. It held. Not because it was uncertain, because it wasn't. Her gaze lingered on his for a moment longer before dropping, not out of hesitation this time, but awareness of how close they still were, of the warmth of his hand against her cheek, the quiet steadiness of it grounding her more than she expected. "I thought," she started, then paused, her voice softer now, more thoughtful than uncertain. "I thought it would feel more complicated than this." Kat's thumb brushed lightly against her cheek, a small absent motion that sent a quiet warmth through her chest. "It still can be," he said gently. "We just don't have to make this part of it complicated." That made her look back at him, something searching in his expression, as if she was still waiting to find the part where this became difficult again. "You make it sound simple." "I didn't say simple," he replied, a faint smile touching his mouth. "I said this part doesn't have to be." Marichat let out a small breath at that, something easing in her chest as she let the words settle properly this time, because he wasn't ignoring the rest of it. He wasn't pretending there weren't things still unresolved. He was just choosing this. Her fingers shifted slightly against his shoulders, not pulling him closer, but not letting the distance return either. The quiet between them stretched, softer now, filled with something warmer, something that didn't need to be filled with words to keep it complete. "You're very sure?" she said after a moment. Kat's gaze didn't waver. "About you? Yeah." The certainty in it should have made her hesitate. Instead, it grounded her. Marichat's breath caught slightly, something deeper settling into her place as she studied him. Not just the words, but the way he held them. The way he didn't rush to match them. Didn't expect anything immediate in return. He simply met them. Her hand slipped from his shoulder, but only to move closer. Her fingers brushing lightly against his wrist this time, tracing the line of it as if grounding herself in something real and present. "And if I'm not there yet?" she asked quietly. "Then you're not," he said just as steady. "That doesn't change where I am." There was no pressure in it, no expectations, just truth. Marichat exhaled slowly, the last of the tightness in her chest easing as she let herself stand in that moment without trying to define it, without trying to get ahead of it. For once, she let it be enough. Her gaze flickered briefly to his mouth again, the memory of the kiss still warm, still present in a way that made her more aware of everything else. The closeness, the quiet, the way neither of them had stepped back. "You're thinking again," Kat murmured, the faintest hint of amusing returning. Marichat huffed softly, though there was no real embarrassment in it now. "I always think." "I know." "And you don't." He tilted his head slightly. "I do. I just decided not to let it stop me this time." That felt familiar in a different way, because that was exactly what she'd been trying to do, just not quite succeeding. Marichat's lips curved faintly before she stepped closer again, the movement smaller this time, no less intentional. A hand lifted, this time not hovering, not hesitating, but settling lightly against his jaw. A thumb brushing softly along the edge of his cheek, where the mass met skin. The contact shifted something, not rushed, not overwhelming, just clear. Kat's breath changed just slightly, his hand moving from her cheek to the rest more fully at her waist. Still gentle, still careful, but more certain now in its place. Marichat didn't pull back. She didn't overthink it. She leaned in. The kiss this time wasn't attentive. It wasn't testing. It was still soft, still careful in the way it began, but there was no hesitation in it now. No question of whether she should or shouldn't. She wanted to. And that made all the difference. Her fingers curved slightly at his jaw as the kiss deepened, not in urgency, but in familiarity, in the quiet recognition of something that had already begun to take shape between them. Cat responded in kind, his hand steady at her waist, anchoring there without pulling her closer than she chose to be. The balance held, mutual, equal. When they broke apart, it wasn't because they had to. It was because they chose to. Marichat's breath was softer now, her forehead resting lightly against his again. As she let the moment settle, her thoughts quieter than they had been in days. This is new, she admitted. Cat let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You think? She nudged him lightly at that, though her hand didn't leave him. You know what I mean. I do. The softness returned then, not fragile, not uncertain, but settled into something more natural, something that didn't feel like it needed to be protected quite so carefully anymore. Marichat shifted slightly, just enough to look at him properly again, her expression thoughtful but no longer guarded. I kept thinking I was the one pushing this, she said quieter now. That I was the one stepping into something you weren't asking for. Cat's brows furrowed slightly, something almost disbelieving across his face. Princess, I've been chasing you across rooftops for months. That earned a small, genuine laugh from her, the tension easing even further. That's not the same thing. No? He asked lightly. No, she said, though her voice softened as she added, this is different. He held her gaze for a moment, something quieter settling there. Yeah, it is. The agreement didn't feel heavy. It didn't complicate things. It simply acknowledged what was already there. Marichat's fingers shifted slightly where they rested against him, not pulling away, but settling more comfortable now, as her body had finally caught up with the decision her heart had made. You didn't step back, she said after a moment. Cat's expression softened. Neither did you. That was the point. Marichat let out a slow breath, her gaze steady on his as something warm and certain settled into place beneath everything else. Good, she said quietly. There was a small pause, the kind that didn't interrupt the moment but deepened it, letting everything they had said sit comfortably between them, and then softer. I think I needed to know you'd meet me here. Cat didn't answer straight away. He didn't need to. The way his hand remained steady at her waist, the way he stayed exactly where he was instead of stepping back into something safer or easier. That was the answer. Marichat's lips curved faintly, something lighter settling into her chest as she leaned in once more, this time without hesitation, without thought, a hand steady against him as she closed the distance. The kiss that followed wasn't about testing or proving anything. It was about staying. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The kiss lingered in a way that felt like less like a moment and more like something unfolding, something neither of them was rushing to define or end. Marichat didn't pull away immediately this time. Instead, she let herself stay there, close enough to feel the steady rhythm of his breath and the quiet warmth of his hand at her waist, anchoring her in a way that made everything else feel distant. When she finally drew back, it was only enough to look at him, her fingers still resting lightly against his jaw. There was something different in her expression now. Not uncertainty, not hesitation, but a quiet clarity that hadn't been there before. This really doesn't feel like I thought it would, she said softly. Kat's gaze stayed on her, steady and attentive. Better or worse? A faint smile touched her lips. Different. That's not an answer. It is, she said, her tone warmer now, more certain. I just don't think I had the right expectations to compare it to. That seemed to settle something in him, the tension she hadn't realized was there easing slightly, as his thumb traced a small, absent circle at her side. It wasn't distracting. If anything, it grounded the moment further, making it easier for her to stay present instead of getting lost in the question that usually followed her thoughts. Marichat let her hand slip from his jaw, not pulling away but shifting, her fingers brushing lightly along his wrist before settling more comfortable against his arm. The contact felt easier now, more natural, like something she didn't have to think about every second. You're quieter, she observed after a moment. Kat huffed a small breath, something almost amused slipping through. I'm trying not to ruin the moment. You're not that bad. Wow, high praise. She nudged him lightly at that, the movement small but easy, her smile lingering just a little longer this time before softening again. You know what I mean. I do, he said, his tone gentler now. I just don't want to say something that makes you overthink this again. That caught her off guard, not because of what he said, but because of how easily he said it. Like he had been paying attention, like he understood the pattern well enough now to avoid stepping into it. Marichat's gaze searched his face for a moment, something thoughtful settling into her expression. You really are trying? Of course I am, he replied, a faint smile returning. You're worth getting it right. The simplicity in that made her chest tighten, not uncomfortably, but enough to remind her that this wasn't light, wasn't something either of them was treating casually. Her fingers shifted slightly against his arm, grounding herself again before she spoke. You don't have to get it perfect. I know, he said. I just don't want to get it wrong. Marichat exhaled softly, the attention easing just a little more as she let that settle. Because that wasn't pressure. It wasn't expectation, it was care. Her gaze drifted briefly, not away from him entirely, but enough to take in the space around them. The quiet stretch of rooftop, the distant glow of the city, the way everything felt softer now, less overwhelming than it had before. It's strange, she admitted, her voice quiet now. I kept thinking if I came back here, everything would feel heavier. Like I'd have to figure everything out all at once. And? He asked gently. It doesn't, she said, looking back at him. It just feels like I'm allowed to take this one moment at a time. Kat's expression softened at that, something warmer settling in his eyes. You always were. I know, she said, a faint smile returning. I just don't think I believed it. The honesty of it didn't make the moment fragile. If anything, it made it steadier. Marichat stepped a fraction closer, not enough to change the space between them dramatically, but enough to feel intentional, a hand shifting again as it settled more naturally at his shoulder. "You stayed," she said quietly. Kat didn't look away. "I told you I would." "I know," she replied, her voice softer now. "I just needed to see it." He nodded slightly, like that made sense to him, like he hadn't expected her to take his word for it without proof. "I'm here," he said, the simplicity of it settling deeper than anything else. Marichat's breath softened, her gaze dropping briefly before lifting again, something more certain taking its place. She didn't hesitate this time. When she leaned in again, her hand steadied at his shoulder as she closed the distance. The kiss was softer than the last, not because it meant less, but because it didn't need to prove anything. It was slower, more familiar already, her lips brushing his with a quiet ease that hadn't been there before. There was no question in it now, no pause where doubt might have slipped in, just choice. Kat responded just as gently, his hand still at her waist, steady and grounding, his thumb brushing lightly against the fabric of her side in a way that made the moment feel more real rather than less. When they parted, it was gradual, the closeness lingering rather than breaking, her forehead resting briefly against his again as she let out a quiet breath. "Oh, this is dangerous," she murmured, though there was no real fear in it. Kat's lips curved faintly. "Because you like me?" She huffed softly, though her hand didn't move. "That's not new." "Because I like you back?" "That's also not new." "Then what's dangerous?" Marichat lifted her head slightly, just enough to meet his gaze properly again, her expression softer but more honest than before. "That I might not want to walk away from this." The words settled between them, quiet but significant. Kat didn't joke this time, didn't deflect. He simply looked at her, something steady and certain in his expression as his hand remained exactly where it was. "Then don't," he said. No hesitation, no complication, just don't. Marichat's breath caught, the simplicity of it cutting through the last of the hesitation she had been holding on to, because it wasn't a demand, it wasn't pressure, it was permission. Her fingers tightening slightly at his shoulders as something warm and certain settled into place, something that felt less like a risk and more like a decision she was finally ready to make. "You are very hard to argue with," she said quietly. "I'm very persuasive." "That's one word for it." There was a small pause, the kind that didn't interrupt but deepening, letting everything settle into something real and grounded. Marichat's gaze softened, her thumb brushing lightly against his shoulder as she let herself stay in that space without pulling back, without creating distance where it didn't need to exist. "I don't want to keep holding back," she admitted. Kat's expression shifted, something gentler, more careful settling into place. "Then don't." It was the same answer, but this time it meant more. Marichat didn't respond with words, she stepped closer instead, closing that little distance remained, her hand steady as she reached for him, her fingers brushing along his jaw before settling there with quiet certainty. And when she kissed him again, it wasn't cautious. It wasn't hesitant. It was hers, chosen. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she was risking something she might lose. She felt like she was finally holding on to something that was hers to keep. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Something in the way she leaned into him this time. Something in the steadiness of her hand against his jaw. The quiet certainty in the way she closed the distance. It wasn't searching anymore. It wasn't testing or questioning or waiting for something to go wrong. It was choosing. Kat felt it. He didn't rush to meet it. Didn't overwhelm it. But he didn't hold back either. His hand moved more fully at her waist, not pulling her closer than she wanted, but meeting her there, anchoring the moment in the same way she was. The kiss deepened naturally, not because either of them pushed it there, but because neither of them stepped away. Marichat's fingers curved slightly where they rested against him, a thumb brushing lightly along his cheek as the contact lingered, warm and steady. There was no hesitation left in it now, only presence. When she drew back, it was slow, her breath soft as she stayed close, her gaze lifting to meet his again. There was something new in it now, not uncertainty, not even cautious hope, something steadier, something that felt like it had settled into place. I think, she began, then paused, her lips curving slightly as she adjusted the thought instead of forcing it too quickly. I think I was waiting for this to feel wrong. Kat's brows lifted slightly, though his hand didn't move from her waist, and it doesn't, she said simply. The honesty of it landed between them, quiet but solid, and something in his expression softened in response. Not relief exactly, but recognition. Good, he said. Marichat huffed softly at that, a hand slipping from his jaw to the rest more comfortably against his shoulder, her fingers curling there in a way that's more natural now and less deliberate. You keep saying that like it's the only answer you need. It is, he replied, a faint smile returning. You being here is my favorite outcome. She shook her head slightly, but there was no resistance in it, just a quiet warmth she wasn't trying to hide anymore. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full. Not with questions, but with everything that had finally settled into something real between them. Marichat's gaze drifted briefly, not away from him entirely, but enough to take in the space around them. The familiar rooftops, the city stretching out beyond it. The quiet that had once felt too heavy now softened into something almost peaceful. I spent so long trying to figure out what this meant, she said after a moment, her voice thoughtful rather than uncertain. Like if I didn't understand it first, I'd get it wrong. Kat tilted his head slightly, watching her. And now? She looked back at him, something clearer in her expression now. Now I think I just needed to feel it first. That made something in his chest settle. Sounds like you, he said. Marichat smiled faintly. It does, doesn't it? Her hand shifted slightly against his shoulder. Her fingers relaxed now, no longer holding on out of uncertainty, but staying because she wanted to. I don't have all the answers, she added. You don't need them. I know, she said, softer now, but I'm not pretending they don't matter either. I wouldn't expect you to. That was the balance. Not ignoring what came next, but not letting it take the moment away from them either. Marichat stepped a fraction closer, not because she needed to close the distance anymore, but because it felt right. A hand lifting again, this time resting more lightly against his chest, the steady rhythm beneath her palm grounding her in a way that she hadn't expected. You really are here, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. Kat's hand shifted slightly at her waist, his thumb brushing softly at her side in a small grounding motion. I told you I would be." "I know," she murmured, her gaze lifting again. "I just didn't realize how much that would matter." He didn't answer that with words. He didn't need to. The way he stayed, the way he didn't step back or turn it into something lighter, that was the answer. Marichat's breath softened, something warm settling more fully into place as she let herself stay there. Let herself feel it without trying to hold it at a distance. Then quieter. "I don't want this just to be a moment." Kat's expression shifted slightly, something more serious settling in, though the warmth didn't leave it. "It doesn't have to be." The certainty in his voice didn't feel like a promise he couldn't keep. It felt like a choice he was already making. Marichat studied him for a moment, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that might suggest this was fragile or fleeting. There was none. Just steadiness. Just him. Her fingers pressed slightly more firmly against his chest, not pulling him closer, but grounding herself in the reality of him being there. "Okay," she said. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it carried. Kat's lips curved faintly, something softer settling into place as he nodded. "Okay." The words felt different now. Not an agreement to wait, not an agreement to hold back, but an agreement to move forward. Together. Marichat's gaze flickered briefly to his mouth again, the warmth of the earlier kiss still lingering, still present, in a way that made her more aware of how little distance remained between them. She didn't hesitate this time, didn't question it. A hand lifted from his chest to his collar, to her fingers catching lightly in the fabric as she leaned in again, closing the distance with a quiet certainty that hadn't been there before. The kiss that followed wasn't tentative. She wasn't searching. It was sure, still soft, still grounding in the same care they had held from the beginning, but deeper now, more familiar already, like something that had been found its rhythm rather than trying to create it. Kat met her there fully, his hand sturdy at her waist as the moment settled into something that felt less like something they might lose, and more like something they had chose to keep. When they part, it was slower again, the space between them lingering, neither of them rushing to fill it or step away from it. Marichat's breath was soft, her forehead resting briefly against his once more, her thoughts quieter than they had been in days. "I think," she said, her voice almost a whisper now, "I finally understand why I couldn't let this go." Kat didn't move, didn't interrupt. She lifted her head slightly, just enough to meet his gaze. "It's not because it's easy," she continued, "or because it makes sense." A faint smile touched his lips. "That tracks." She huffed softly, but her expression softened again, almost immediately. "Because it feels right," she finished. The words settled between them, simple but steady, and this time there was no hesitation left behind them. Kat's expression softened fully then, something warmer, quieter settling into place as he looked at her. Not like he was trying to understand her, but like he already did. "Yeah," he said softly, "it does." The city moved around them, distant and quiet, the world continuing on without them for just a little while longer. But up here, on this balcony, nothing felt uncertain anymore. Not gone, not solved, but no longer something she was afraid of. Marichat's fingers slipped from his collar, but her hand didn't fall away entirely. It lingered, brushing lightly against his arm as she stayed close, the space between them no longer something she needed to measure or manage. She didn't pull away, and neither did he, because this wasn't something they were trying to figure out anymore. It was something they had chosen. And for the first time, that felt like enough. I hope you enjoyed part 5 of Strawberry Kisses, and comment down below how many kisses you counted that Marichat did. It is called Sweet Kisses for a reason, this chapter, this part. So I hope you enjoyed it. It definitely paid off in the end. Make sure you smash that like button. And comment down below what you thought of it. I love to hear your feedback, guys. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and share it to someone else who might enjoy it. And I hope you are good and all soft and melted now. And I will speak to you soon. Bye.